The message came in at 6:12 a.m. I was already awake, sitting at the edge of my bed, staring at my phone like it might suddenly apologize for everything it had shown me over the years. We didn't include you on the guest list. That was the entire sentence. No greeting, no explanation, no warmth. Just a cold line from my mother, typed like I was a scheduling conflict instead of her daughter. I read it twice, then a third time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just laughed under my breath, the kind of laugh that slips out when something hurts so much it circles back into disbelief. Because this wasn't a surprise. It was just confirmation. My younger sister, Camille, was getting married in 3 days. The wedding everyone in our family had been obsessing over for months. Luxury venue, imported flowers, a guest list packed with politicians, CEOs, and families that moved money the way other people moved groceries. And me? I didn't fit the image. That was the phrase my aunt had used weeks earlier during a phone call she thought was polite. You know how Camille is, she'd said lightly. She wants a very elevated atmosphere. Elevated. As if I lived underground. I was the older sister. The one who left home at 19. The one who didn't marry rich. The one who built a quiet life instead of chasing attention. I ran a small consulting firm. I paid my bills. I lived well. Just not loudly. And in my family, silence looked like failure. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my cousin Lauren. I heard you're not going. Honestly, probably for the best. The guest list is elite. Elite. I set the phone down and stood up, pacing the room. The morning sun spilled across the floor of my apartment, bright and calm, completely unaware that my family had just erased me again. I was about to shower when my doorbell rang. I frowned. No one ever showed up unannounced. I checked the time, 6:28 a.m. I opened the door cautiously. And there he was. Ethan Caldwell. Perfectly pressed navy suit. Coffee in one hand. That familiar calm expression that always made people assume he was just another well-dressed executive. Which was funny, considering he quietly controlled more money than most governments. You're up early, he said, lifting the coffee slightly. Thought you might need this. I stepped aside automatically, still half in shock. Ethan walked in like he belonged there, like he always did. We'd met 6 months earlier at a charity strategy meeting I'd been consulting on. No spotlight. No press. Just work. He'd been introduced as Ethan. Not that Ethan. I hadn't known who he really was until weeks later, when I accidentally walked past a boardroom screen and saw his face paired with the words majority stakeholder. I almost laughed out loud that day. Because the man who carried his own coffee and remembered everyone's assistant's name was the same one journalists called unreachable. We weren't public. We weren't flashy. We were real. And right now, he was standing in my living room, handing me coffee, like it was the most normal thing in the world. You okay? He asked, watching my face closely. I hesitated. Then I handed him my phone. He read the messages. Slowly. When he finished, he looked up, not angry. Focused. So, he said carefully, they excluded you. They said my energy doesn't align with their guests. I replied flatly. He let out a short breath through his nose. That's interesting, he said. Why? Because Camille's fiancé's family has been trying to get a meeting with me for almost 8 months. I blinked. What? Ethan took a seat on my couch like he was discussing the weather. They've gone through 3 intermediaries. 2 law firms. A mutual donor. He looked at me calmly. They want capital backing for an expansion that won't survive without it. My chest tightened. You're serious. Very. A long silence settled between us. I thought about the venue, the guest list, the speeches that would praise my sister's perfect connections. I thought about my mother's message. We didn't include you. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Do you want to go? He asked. I laughed softly. I wasn't invited. That wasn't my question. I looked at him, then really looked. This man had never tried to impress anyone. Never raised his voice. Never needed to dominate a room. But when he entered one, everything shifted. Yes, I said quietly. I want to go. A slow smile appeared on his face. Then we'll go. The wedding day arrived wrapped in luxury. The venue was a private estate outside Aspen, stone paths, white florals, security at every entrance. Guests arrived in black SUVs and whispered brands like passwords. Inside, my family floated through the crowd like royalty. My mother smiled, so wide it looked painful. My sister sparkled, surrounded by cameras and approval. And then, the entrance doors opened again. The murmurs started immediately. People turned. Phones lowered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. I walked in beside Ethan, my hand resting lightly on his arm. I wore a deep emerald dress, simple, tailored, confident. Nothing flashy. Nothing desperate. Just me. The room froze. My aunt's mouth fell open. My cousin's eyes widened. My mother's smile collapsed completely. And then Camille saw me. Her expression twisted from confusion to horror. Because she recognized him. Everyone did. A man she'd spent months chasing through assistants and intermediaries. A man she'd been told was too busy and unavailable. And he was standing beside the sister she'd erased. Whispers exploded across the room. Is that? No way. What is he doing here? Ethan leaned toward me and spoke softly, his voice steady. Ready. I met my sister's eyes across the room. She looked like she'd just realized the ground beneath her feet wasn't solid anymore. Yes, I said calmly. I'm ready. The silence didn't last long. It shattered the moment Camille's fiancé, Victor Hale, turned pale. He stood near the front, champagne glass frozen halfway to his mouth, staring at Ethan like he'd just seen a ghost step out of a luxury magazine. He whispered something urgently to Camille. Her smile vanished. I watched her posture stiffen, her fingers tightening around her bouquet. She followed Victor's gaze back to us, and when her eyes locked onto Ethan's face, something inside her cracked. She knew. Because everyone in her circle knew the name Ethan Caldwell, even if they pretended not to say it too loudly. The man whose approval could open or close entire markets. The man her fiancé's family had been chasing like a rumor. My mother was the first to move. She crossed the room fast, heels clicking sharply against marble, face flushed with panic disguised as enthusiasm. Alyssa, she exclaimed, as if we'd just spoken yesterday. You're here. Her eyes flicked to Ethan. Then back to me. Then back to him again. I didn't realize you, she hesitated, voice tightening. We're coming with company. Ethan smiled politely. Good afternoon, he said, extending his hand. Ethan. Her hand shook as she took it. Oh, of course, she said too quickly. We've heard so much about you. He nodded. I'm sure. Behind her, my Aunt Marianne had already pulled out her phone, pretending to text while very clearly taking photos. Camille finally stepped forward. She looked stunning. Perfect makeup. Perfect dress. Perfect posture. But her eyes were wild. Alyssa, she said, forcing warmth into her voice. You didn't tell us you were coming. I tilted my head slightly. I didn't know I needed permission to attend a public event, I replied calmly. Her jaw tightened. Victor cleared his throat and stepped closer, suddenly all charm. Mr. Caldwell, he said eagerly, extending his hand. I'm Victor Hale. We've been trying to connect for some time. Ethan shook his hand once. Firm. Brief. I'm aware, he said. The tension snapped tight. Victor laughed nervously. What a coincidence meeting you here. Ethan glanced around the room. Is it? He asked. The surrounding guests leaned in without meaning to. This wasn't part of the program. This was better. My cousin Lauren appeared at my side, voice low and urgent. Alyssa, she whispered. Why didn't you tell us who you were seeing? I met her eyes. You didn't ask, I said. Across the room, Camille's mother-in-law was already on her phone, whispering furiously. Her father-in-law stared at Ethan like a gambler realizing the house had changed the rules mid-game. The officiant hesitated at the altar, unsure whether to proceed. Ethan leaned slightly toward Victor. Since we're finally face-to-face, he said evenly, this seems like a good time to clarify something. Victor straightened, hopeful. Yes, absolutely. I won't be moving forward with your proposal. The words landed softly, but the impact was devastating. Victor's face drained of color. I'm sorry, he stammered. I've reviewed the materials, Ethan continued. The projections are inflated. The risk is misrepresented. And more importantly, he paused, eyes flicking briefly to me, I don't partner with people who confuse image with integrity. A murmur rippled through the room. Camille stepped forward sharply. This is inappropriate, she snapped. This is my wedding. Ethan turned to her, calm and unbothered. And you chose to exclude someone important to me based on vibe, he said, quoting the word with surgical precision. That tells me everything I need to know. My mother gasped. That was a misunderstanding, she rushed in. We were just trying to maintain harmony. By erasing your daughter? Ethan asked. Silence. All eyes turned to me. For the first time, I spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. I wasn't invited because I didn't look valuable to you, I said evenly. Because I didn't arrive with status attached. Camille's voice cracked. That's not true. I met her gaze. You didn't call me, I said. You didn't explain. You didn't defend me. Victor's parents exchanged frantic looks. Victor leaned toward Camille, whispering sharply, Fix this. She turned back to me, eyes suddenly wet. Alyssa, please, she said. Let's talk privately. I smiled. We are talking, I replied. Ethan slipped his hand into mine, not possessive, not performative. Just steady. I think it's time we go, he said gently. My mother stepped forward desperately. Please, she said, voice breaking. We didn't mean to hurt you. We're family. I looked at her, really looked. Then I nodded once. I know, I said. That's why this hurt. Ethan and I turned toward the exit. Behind us, whispers exploded. Deals collapsed in real time. Phones buzzed with damage control that came too late. At the door, Ethan paused and looked back once. I wish you a beautiful celebration, he said politely. Sincerely. Then we walked out. Into the mountain air. Into silence. Into freedom. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Ethan squeezed my hand. You okay? He asked. I smiled, small, real, relieved. Yeah, I said. I am now. The fallout didn't wait until morning. It started before Ethan and I even reached the car. My phone began vibrating in my hand, once, twice, then nonstop. Missed calls. Messages stacking so fast the screen lagged. Mom. Camille. Victor. Unknown numbers. I didn't answer. Ethan opened the passenger door for me, calm as ever, like we hadn't just walked out of a room where a dozen reputations were quietly imploding. As we pulled away from the estate, headlights flared behind us. 2 cars followed at a distance, then slowed, unsure. Do you want me to block the numbers? Ethan asked gently. No, I said. Let them talk. I stared out the window as the mountain slipped past, my phone lighting up again. A message finally broke through the noise. Camille, please call me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I laughed softly, not out of joy, but clarity. She still thought this was about embarrassment. 5 minutes later, another message arrived. Victor, we need to clear up a misunderstanding. I think Ethan acted on incomplete information. Ethan glanced over briefly. That's impressive confidence. 10 minutes after that, my mother's name appeared again. I answered this one. Alyssa, she cried immediately. What have you done? I took a breath. I showed up, I said. That's all. You ruined your sister's wedding, she snapped. No, I replied evenly. You did that when you decided I wasn't worthy of standing there. Silence stretched on the line. Then her tone shifted, softer, careful. We didn't know, she said. If we'd known who you were with. I cut in quietly. That's the problem. She didn't argue. Behind her words, I could hear chaos, raised voices, hurried footsteps, panic disguised as celebration. Alyssa, she said finally, please come back. We can fix this. I looked at Ethan, then back at the road ahead. No, I said. You can sit with it. I ended the call. The next morning, the story had already spread. Not publicly, yet, but in the circles that mattered. Victor's family had lost 2 silent partners overnight. A third paused negotiations indefinitely. Invitations were rescinded. Calls went unanswered. Camille's phone buzzed with sympathy messages that felt colder than silence. Around noon, there was a knock at my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Camille stood there alone. No dress. No makeup. Just swollen eyes and shaking hands. "I didn't know," she said immediately. I stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like she didn't deserve the space. "They said you'd bring attention," she whispered. "That you'd take focus away from the guests." I crossed my arms. "So you erased me." Her voice broke. "I thought if I made this perfect, they'd finally respect me." I felt something soften. Not forgiveness, but understanding. "I hope you get that respect someday," I said quietly. "Just not at my expense." She looked up at me, tears spilling freely now. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have chosen you." I nodded once. "Yes," I said. "You should have." She left without another word. That evening, Ethan and I sat on the balcony, city lights glowing below. "You didn't enjoy that," he said, not accusing, observing. "I didn't need to," I replied. "I just needed it to stop." He smiled slightly. "They'll keep trying," he said. "Apologies. Invitations. Damage control." I leaned back, breathing in the quiet. "This time," I said, "I get to decide who has access." My phone buzzed once more. A single message from my mother. "We were wrong. Please let us make it right." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I put the phone down. For the first time, I felt something better than revenge. Peace. Peace didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly, in the days that followed, when the noise died down and the world stopped demanding explanations from me. The calls slowed. The messages changed tone. They weren't asking anymore. They were waiting. One afternoon, a handwritten envelope appeared in my mailbox. No logo. No assistant's name. Just my mother's handwriting. I didn't open it right away. Ethan watched me turn it over in my hands like it might bite. "You don't owe anyone a response," he said gently. "I know," I replied. "But I owe myself closure." I opened the letter. It wasn't dramatic. No excuses. No blame shifting. Just a simple admission. We measured worth by proximity to power. We forgot to measure love. I exhaled slowly. 2 days later, I agreed to meet them on my terms. A quiet cafe. Neutral ground. No audience. My mother arrived first. Then my father. Then Camille. They looked smaller somehow, stripped of the shine they'd worn so comfortably at the wedding. We sat in silence for a moment. "I'm not here to punish you," I said finally. "I'm here to set boundaries." My mother nodded, tears already in her eyes. "We'll listen," she said. "I won't chase approval anymore," I continued. "I won't shrink to fit your image. And I won't accept conditional love." Camille reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. "I love you," she whispered. "I believe you," I said. "But love needs action." They agreed to everything. Not because Ethan stood behind me, not because their social standing had cracked, but because for once they saw me clearly. Later that evening, Ethan and I attended a small fundraising dinner, nothing flashy. No press. Just people doing real work. As we walked in, someone recognized him. Then me. Whispers followed, but they felt different now. Not judgment. Respect. A woman approached me quietly. "I heard what you did," she said. "Not the wedding. The walking away." I smiled. "That was the easy part," I replied. The hard part had been learning I didn't need to be chosen to be valuable. Ethan slipped his hand into mine as we stepped onto the terrace overlooking the city. "You changed the rules," he said. "No," I corrected gently. "I stopped playing." He laughed softly. A month later, Camille invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. No speeches. No performances. She looked healthier. Calmer. I'm starting over, she said. On my own. I nodded. That's brave. She smiled. I learned that from you. I didn't need to hear anything else. That night, Ethan and I returned home, the city glowing beneath us. He poured 2 glasses of wine and raised his. To walking in with your head high, he said. I clinked my glass against his. To knowing when to leave, I replied. I looked out over the lights and felt something settle in my chest. I hadn't won because someone powerful stood beside me. I won because I stood beside myself. And that was the happiest ending I could have asked for.